Alright, we got another video. This one is called First Black Female Sheriff Indicted on 30 Felonies Over Incompetence.
Is not only the first female sheriff of Orleans Parish, she's also the state's first black woman to occupy the sheriff's office in the state, period.
We're going to talk about history. When you do break a glass ceiling, you got to celebrate it.
A new sheriff in town, Susan Hudson, breaking barriers indeed, as the first African-American female sheriff in the state's history.
A few moments later.
Breaking news. Orleans Sheriff Susan Hudson is indicted on 30 felony counts.
So, the first black female sheriff in the state of Louisiana has been indicted on 30 felony counts. You can't make this stuff up. This is Susan Hudson, and she's about to make history being the first black female sheriff in Louisiana's history.
We're going to talk about history. When you do break a glass ceiling, you got to celebrate it.
A new sheriff in town, Susan Hudson, breaking barriers indeed, as the first African-American female sheriff in the state's history.
I was looking at how long Louisiana's been a state, right? 200 plus years, and all that time, not one African-American woman has been able to get to this position. 2022, right? And so you're like, it's time for all those barriers to be broken down.
First a parade, then the inauguration ceremony.
Now, Susan Hudson is a political activist. She's extremely progressive and left-wing. And before becoming sheriff, she actually served as the independent police monitor for New Orleans.
Let me give you a little bit of a background of Susan Hudson. She's running on a progressive platform, and she scored a major endorsement from Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams, who also ran on that similar progressive platform during his race last year. Now, Hudson has no political experience, but says it's time for a change, and she's focusing on what she calls the 3C ideology: care, custody, and control.
Before voters named her sheriff, she spent 11 years as New Orleans independent police monitor.
So you have this extremely progressive sheriff whose plan essentially is, we don't really want to punish people. We don't want to put people in jail for their crimes. We want to pretend like crime doesn't exist. And this is horrible for the people of New Orleans because New Orleans has a huge crime problem. Remember when the district attorney of New Orleans was actually carjacked with his mom?
My mother's really shook up. She keeps reliving it, but we're just thankful that that we're alive. Nobody's hurt.
This is surveillance video from moments after the teens allegedly stole Williams' car. Amaja Curtis, Dejon Curtis, Santan Gilmore, and Ahmad Seals have all been charged as adults in this case.
So the people of New Orleans said, hey, let's hire the most progressive, anti-police person we could as sheriff, and that's what they did. So what do you think happened? Well, obviously things went off the rails immediately. See, since she is sheriff, she handles the jails. And immediately, inmates went crazy and conditions at the jail worsened under her tenure.
Yeah, but weeks into Hudson's tenure, inmates in a high-security pod at the Orleans Justice Center barricaded themselves in that pod, blocking out staff. That standoff lasted 3 days, with inmates demanding better conditions. A report by federal jail monitors claimed that conditions in the jail had worsened in some cases under Hudson's oversight.
So under the progressive sheriff, things actually got worse for the inmates, not better. And then the controversies just started racking up. For instance, her incompetence caused the court to hold her in contempt because she wasn't securing transportation from inmates from the jail to the court.
A New Orleans judge is accusing the sheriff of contempt of court, and she's now being ordered to appear before that judge tomorrow afternoon. Criminal District Chief Judge Tracy Flemings Davalier says that Sheriff Susan Hudson is ignoring a court order to transport recent arrestees from jail to magistrate court on weekends and holidays. Now, during the pandemic, that process was paused, going to Zoom and then doing transports during the week. However, on June 18th, the judge issued an order for Hudson to resume those weekend and holiday transports beginning this past Saturday.
Now, this became so bad, they were going to sentence her to like 6 months in prison with a $500 fine. But the appeals court last second stepped in and said, let's slow it down because she is the sheriff.
Last Friday, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals temporarily suspended Sheriff Susan Hudson's contempt of court ruling at the last minute, and WWL exclusively received the documents supporting that stay by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Sheriff Susan Hudson was set to face up to 6 months imprisonment or a fine of up to $500. That's because the Chief Judge of Orleans Parish Criminal Court held the sheriff contempt of court for failing to provide a staff of deputies for magistrate court for weekend sessions.
Now, if being found in contempt of court is not enough, the money started becoming a little funny. Now, context is key. During Mardi Gras, the city is packed. Local law enforcement needs backup. The sheriff backfills her staff by bringing officers from other parishes. Since these officers are coming from out of town, the protocol is to reserve hotel rooms for them so they can have a place to stay while they work those grueling
Don't tell me she took money from people coming in to protect the city while that Mardi Gras event is happening. Don't tell me she done did that.
shifts. Now, as per protocol, the sheriff reserved a total of 90 rooms across multiple hotels. And obviously, these rooms couldn't be used by the sheriff's own staff because they lived in the city and they could just go home. So why would the sheriff's department need to pay for hotel rooms for the local staff? They live there.
Information from the New Orleans Office of Inspector General about Sheriff Hudson's hotel reservations during Mardi Gras. The rooms were supposed to be used by law enforcement who had to drive into town to help the NOPD during parades. But in a new report, the Inspector General finds that the sheriff reserved 13 rooms at the Omni Royal Orleans for her command staff, not for any out-of-towners. Her staff members stayed there for a total of 37 nights, but the sheriff had reserved and paid for 90 nights. The total cost of about $18,000, and according to the OIG, most of that came from the 53 nights when the rooms remained empty.
So the sheriff had a lot to answer for. Why is your staff staying in high-end hotels when they live in the same city? Here's what the sheriff had to say.
I don't see a controversy here, no. I see this as being money well spent to make sure that $1 million was also well spent.
That was Orleans Parish Sheriff Susan Hudson defending her decision to house 13 top deputies at local hotels, some for 11 days and nights.
13 top deputies?
While they helped with Carnival Parade security. But within hours of that interview, here was Hudson again.
An honorary deputy of the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. Love my sheriff.
That was Hudson thanking the owners of LA Canine, a police dog training company in Vermilion Parish. The company agreed to donate more than $19,000 to pay for those hotel rooms at the Omni Royal Orleans, Sheraton, and Marriott. However, in this Facebook post by one of the owners, Lance Broussard, he characterized the donation as helping the sheriff with, quote, a little problem.
So crisis averted. The city got all its money back and the sheriff was off the hook. Now, we got a problem. We got this woman who's been elected sheriff. She's supposed to be in charge of running a jail, but has no experience running jails. So things kind of got out of control.
Legislative audit just released today scrutinized 3 years of operations at the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Department. It found over...
Wait, she has no experience running the jail. Does she have any experience being a police officer? At all?
1,000 instances of potential payroll fraud, leading to chronic staff shortages and missing cell block security patrols. The auditor found deputies performed less than 30% of required sale checks, and some cell blocks just performing 4% of those timed security patrols. Staffing is a source of the problem, according to the report, with some deputies allowed to double book shifts, staffing off-duty details at the same time they're scheduled to secure the jail. The auditor counting over 1,300 instances of what the report describes as this potential payroll fraud involving 179 deputies over 3 years.
So as you see, the sheriff wasn't really doing a great job. And then you had the fact that there was a massive jailbreak.
Massive manhunt after a stunning jailbreak in New Orleans. 10 inmates escaping, some charged with murder, all considered armed and dangerous. And authorities tonight investigating whether this was an inside job.
Wait, what are they armed with? Knives? Wait, okay, you escape prison. You get out of jail or prison. No, yeah, you get out of jail. What are you armed with? You armed with a homemade shank? A homemade knife? I ain't gonna lie, the guns is legal over there in Louisiana, so they just walking around brandishing homemade knives?
Here's ABC's Maria Villarreal.
Tonight, these stunning images from inside a New Orleans jail cell where 10 inmates, some charged with murder, escaped, sparking an urgent citywide manhunt. The toilet dislodged from a cell wall, exposing an opening. Scrawled on the wall above, "We innocent and too easy," with an arrow toward the hole where they escaped, out of view of the officer on duty.
Yeah, the inmate was right. This was too easy. So here's what authorities said happened.
Authorities say it happened just after midnight when the inmates broke a lock on a cell door.
They were still able to exit the jail about 1:01 a.m. after breaching a wall behind a toilet in the jail. And based on video surveillance, they were seen exiting a door on the docks where we normally bring in supplies, scaling a wall and running across the interstate.
Officials believe the escapees had help.
These detainees received assistance in their escape from...
Wait, I seen this. This was under her jurisdiction while she was sheriff? Oh, man.
Individuals inside of our department.
They say the toilet could not be removed with bare hands, suggesting someone inside the jail system may have helped the inmates unscrew it with a power tool.
And yes, there was an inside man. Police arrested him.
The hunt continues for the inmates still at large after breaking out of the local jail in New Orleans. But cops say they've found the inside man they believed helped them. A maintenance worker at the jail has been arrested, accused of cutting off the water.
The jail worker has been identified as 33-year-old Sterling Williams. He reportedly claims he was coerced into turning off the water by an inmate who threatened to shank him if he didn't play ball.
Now, just to put everyone's mind at ease, all 10 of those convicts were returned back to prison.
In another development months in the making, the last of 10 inmates who escaped from a Louisiana jail in May was captured today in Atlanta.
Officials say a Crime Stoppers tip this summer led them there, and they found the fugitive hiding in a crawl space.
10 men who escaped from a Louisiana jail in May by crawling through a hole cut in the wall behind a toilet. Above the hole, someone had written messages to the jailers, including this misspelled one, "Too easy, LOL." Groves was the last of the 10 escapees to be found and also the most violent. He was convicted of murdering 2 men on Mardi Gras in 2018. The New Orleans prosecutor says he is facing multiple life sentences.
So obviously it seems like we had a bigger problem at play here. So state investigators looked at the whole department to see how things were being run. And after the investigation, they decided it was time to indict the sheriff.
We start with some major breaking news. Orleans Parish Sheriff Susan Hudson indicted in connection with an investigation into last year's jailbreak in New Orleans.
So this indictment comes in connection with a state investigation by Attorney General Liz Murrell's office into last year's mass escape by 10 inmates. The bombshell news came down within just the last hour.
Arrest warrants released Thursday outline some of the state's evidence, alleging Hudson ignored years of federal monitors' repeated warnings that, quote, enabled 10 dangerous inmates to escape and remain undetected for hours. The warrant describes the jail as understaffed and inmates unsupervised, often relying on one staff member to monitor multiple pods from a control room rather than inside the pod. The warrant also alleges security logs were falsified and the prison's high security unit dissolved. During hours of unsupervised time, a federal monitor found inmates were, quote, assaulting other inmates, assaulting staff, destroying property, starting fires, smoking, possessing dangerous contraband, and/or threatening self-harm. In addition to 14 malfeasance charges and 3 charges of filing or maintaining false public records, Hudson is also accused of obstructing justice and conspiring with CFO Bianca Brown to defy a court order. Brown was indicted on 20 similar counts. The arrest warrants are just a peek at the evidence to come.
So now the sheriff's been arrested, got bond, and made a statement saying, hey, this is not what it seems.
Susan Hudson says she expects complete vindication as she faces 30 felony counts.
In a statement released late Thursday, Sheriff Susan Hudson said she will, quote, aggressively fight to...
Damn, that's her damn, that's her mugshot. They got her on a mugshot. God damn. That's tough.
Clear my name, and she is, quote, confident the facts will vindicate both me personally and the work I have done. Fox 8 legal analyst Joe Responti expects unsurprising strategies from defense attorneys and state prosecutors.
The defense is going to say that, hey, we tried as hard as we could, we just weren't good enough, and you can't convict somebody for being not good at what their job is.
Now this left me to thinking, who the hell is running the city of New Orleans? The mayor's indicted.
It has been a historic day in New Orleans. For the first time, a sitting mayor of New Orleans is facing federal charges. Today, a federal grand jury handed up an indictment against Mayor LaToya Cantrell and her former bodyguard, Jeffrey Vappy. She faces 11 counts, including wire fraud, obstruction, and lying to a grand jury. This all centers around their alleged romantic relationship and how much it cost the city of New Orleans.
Okay, so it seems like the sheriff is going to say, hey, just because I'm bad at my job doesn't mean it's criminal. Yes, I had no experience ever in law enforcement and I got the top law enforcement job because I am extremely progressive. That doesn't...
She had no experience in law enforcement, no experience running a jail. Has she has any experience running anything? A company, a business, her family, a house, anything? So they just hired a sheriff, no experience. Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. New Orleans need to just sink already. Like, they below sea level already, so they just need to go on ahead. Water, the flood needs to come on in and just take the rest of Louisiana. I ain't gonna lie, because when it floods there, whenever a hurricane happens, half of the city underwater. Bridges underwater, houses underwater. Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. Send the flood.
Mean this is criminal. I'm just bad at being a sheriff. And it's going to be the prosecutors that are going to have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was more than that. That she falsified documents, as you heard. That she intentionally let the jail deteriorate to a point where these things could happen. And then on top of that, lied about it. So who do you think has the better case, the prosecution or the defense? Do you think the sheriff is going to jail? If you're here at this point in the video, don't forget, like, subscribe, do like our YouTube stuff. My name is Nathan.
Well, seeing as the I forgot what stepped in, but managed to not get her indicted on those charges before, I don't think that if she does go to jail, she ain't gonna serve that much time. And how the hell did the mayor get indicted too? Like, what's going on over there in Louisiana? I ain't gonna lie. The sheriff over here messing up people in the jail, and the mayor is over here getting indicted. Oh my gosh. The court says slow it down because she's the sheriff. Really? She should be punished Even worse, because she is the sheriff, she knew better, she knew the law, she knew right from wrong. She should be held to a higher standard. How is somebody totally without law enforcement experience elected sheriff? That's what I'm trying to figure out. How does somebody with no experience or background in law enforcement or running anything elected to be in place of running something she has no experience running? That's just like hiring a judge off the street. That's just like hiring a cashier to be a judge. I ain't gonna lie, I don't know how the hell she got the goddamn job. I ain't gonna lie. They need to go ahead and send the flood to Louisiana.